The galaxy was old. Countless civilizations had risen and fallen across its spiral arms. Empires had conquered entire star systems. Species had evolved, expanded, and disappeared into the dust of forgotten worlds. But in all that time, across all that space, there was one rule that every species followed without question. No one entered human territory. Ambassador Al stood before the great council chamber of the Unified Galactic Assembly. His scales shimmered under the artificial lights as he faced the young representative from the Empire. There was barely 300 cycles old. He had not been alive when it happened. None of the younger generation had been. "You want us to open trade routes through Sector 7?" Al asked slowly. His voice carried the weight of ancient memory. "Do you understand what lies in Sector 7? The young shifted his weight impatiently. His name was, and he represented a new generation that questioned everything. "I understand that Sector 7 contains the shortest path between our empire and the markets. The detour costs us 12 cycles of travel time. This is inefficient." A heavy silence fell across the council chamber. Representatives from 100 different species exchanged uncomfortable glances. Some of them remembered. Most of them had only heard the stories, but all of them knew the rule. Al leaned forward. His old eyes held something that did not recognize. It was fear. Deep, ancient, permanent fear. "Young one," Al said softly, "do you know why we avoid Sector 7? Do you know what the humans did?" Made a dismissive gesture with his upper tentacles. "Humans, a primitive species that achieved space travel barely 2,000 cycles ago. I have studied their records. They had weak bodies, short, limited technology. They fought among themselves constantly. By all measurements, they should have been easy prey for any expanding empire." "They should have been," Al agreed. His voice was barely a whisper now. "And that is exactly what the Empire thought." The mention of that name caused physical reactions across the chamber. Some representatives shuddered. Others closed their eyes. A few of the older ones made protective gestures associated with their home religions. They repeated. He had heard the name in historical texts. They were a major power once, were they not? What happened to them? Al stared at the young for a long moment. Then he activated the central display screen. Ancient footage began to play. It was grainy and degraded by time, but the images were still clear enough to understand. The Empire was not just a major power, Al explained as the footage played. They were the major power, 12,000 star systems, a military fleet of 9 million vessels. They had conquered 63 species and enslaved them all. No one could challenge them. No one dared to try. The screen showed massive warships. Each one was the size of a small moon. Their weapons could crack planets in half. Their shields could withstand the explosion of a star. They were the perfect instruments of domination. Then they discovered the humans, Al continued. A small species living on a single blue planet in an unremarkable solar system. They saw them as nothing more than another conquest. Another slave race to add to their collection. Watched the footage with growing interest. What happened? They sent a fleet of 500 ships to Earth. By their standards, this was actually a generous force. They usually only needed 50 ships to conquer a planet. But the humans had crude nuclear weapons, so they decided to be careful. The footage switched to images of the fleet entering Earth's solar system. They moved in perfect formation, confident and unstoppable. The humans received their transmission demanding surrender. They gave them the standard terms: total submission, complete obedience. Any resistance would be punished by the destruction of their largest cities. Al paused. His scales had grown pale. The humans refused. "Foolish," commented. "They could not have won against such a force." "No," Al agreed. "They could not, and they made them pay for their defiance. They destroyed 3 human cities in the first hour. Millions died. The humans watched their families burn. They watched their children die." The footage showed the destruction, felt a slight discomfort watching it. He had seen conquest footage before, but there was something different about this. The human cities were not just military targets. They were homes, schools, hospitals that had made no distinction. The humans surrendered after that, Al said. What choice did they have? They watched as soldiers landed on their planet. They watched as their leaders were executed publicly. They watched as their population was divided into slave categories. So they became slaves like all the others, said. This is standard history. Why does this make their territory forbidden? Al turned off the footage. He looked directly at with those ancient, haunted eyes. Because the humans did not stay slaves. Another heavy silence fell across the chamber. For 20 cycles the humans served the Empire. They worked in their mines, they cleaned their ships, they did everything that was demanded of them. They seemed broken, defeated, just like every other conquered species. Al's voice dropped lower. But they were not broken. They were learning. Every human who worked on a ship memorized its systems. Every human who served in factories studied their technology. Every human who cleaned buildings mapped their layouts. They shared this information secretly, passing it from one human to another across the entire empire. Felt the first hint of unease. What were they planning? The humans have a concept that other species do not truly understand, Al explained. They call it revenge. For most species, revenge means hurting someone who hurt you. But for humans, revenge is something else entirely. It is patient. It is calculated. It is absolute. Al activated another display. This one showed star maps. On a single day, across the entire empire, the humans acted. They had spent 20 cycles placing themselves in critical positions. Engine rooms, power plants, shield generators, command centers, and on that day they activated their plan. The star map began showing red dots appearing across territory. Thousands of them, millions of them. They destroyed 9 million ships simultaneously. They collapsed every power grid on every world. They opened the air locks on space stations. They poisoned water supplies. They deactivated life support systems on orbital habitats. Stared at the display with growing horror. They tried to fight back, but the humans had planned for that too. They had built hidden factories during their years of slavery. They had constructed weapons from stolen technology. They had trained in secret, and they had absolutely no mercy. The footage changed again. It showed human ships now. They were crude compared to vessels, smaller, less elegant, but they were everywhere, and they were attacking everything. The war lasted 3 cycles. By the end, there were no left, not one. The humans did not just defeat them, they erased them, every ship, every station, every colony, every planet. They hunted down survivors hiding in asteroid belts. They tracked down escape pods drifting in deep space. They found the secret bunkers where leaders tried to hide. Al's voice was barely audible now. The humans killed 12 trillion, 12 trillion. And when it was done, they looked at the rest of the galaxy and they said nothing. They simply returned to their territory and waited. Could not speak. The numbers were impossible to process. 12 trillion, an entire species, gone. That was 1800 cycles ago, Al continued. Since then, several other species have attempted to enter human territory. The Dominion sent a diplomatic vessel. It was never seen again. The Collective sent a science team. They found pieces of the ship scattered across 3 light years. The Unity sent their greatest warrior fleet, 90,000 ships. We found one survivor. His mind was completely destroyed. The only words he could speak were human words. He repeated them until he died. Do you know what those words were? Shook his head slowly. We remember. We always remember. The council chamber was absolutely silent. The humans never expanded beyond their territory, Al said. They never tried to conquer other species. They never sought revenge against anyone except those who attacked them first. But they made their message very clear. Leave us alone or join the He turned to face directly. Young one, you ask why we do not enter Sector 7. You ask why we waste 12 cycles of travel time avoiding human space. I will tell you the answer. We avoid human territory because the stars remember what happened. Every species in this galaxy knows that if you threaten humanity, they will not just defeat you. They will end you. Completely. Permanently. They will make it so that future generations wonder if you ever existed at all. His confidence had completely evaporated. He looked at the star map showing human territory. It seemed to glow with a dark and terrible light. They are still there, Al said, watching, waiting, remembering every wrong that was done to them, every city that was burned, every child that died. The humans have a saying that we have learned to respect. They say that they forgive but never forget. But I have studied them longer than most. I believe the truth is simpler. He leaned close too. They neither forgive nor forget. They simply wait. And when the time comes, they act, without mercy, without hesitation, without end. Al straightened and addressed the full council. The proposal to open trade routes through Sector 7 is rejected. This council will not be responsible for provoking humanity. We will continue to take the long route around their territory. We will continue to pretend they do not exist. And we will continue to hope that they never have reason to remember us. The council voted unanimously. Not a single representative disagreed. Far across the galaxy, on a blue planet orbiting an ordinary star, humanity continued its quiet existence. They built their cities. They raised their families. They looked up at the stars and remembered everything. And the galaxy remembered too. Some species were conquered and enslaved and eventually recovered. Some species were destroyed by natural disasters and rebuilt themselves, but they were different. They had crossed a line that should never be crossed. They had hurt humanity. They had killed human children. And now there were nothing but a warning in the historical records of the unified galactic assembly. The stars were full of countless species. Some were ancient beyond measure. Some were young and ambitious. Some were wise and some were foolish. But all of them knew one truth that transcended culture and language and evolution. Do not enter human territory. The stars remember what happened. And so do the humans. They always remember.